Okay.
We're now live.
All right, members, welcome. Oops. To this meeting of the Children and Young People Scrutiny panel, cast of thousands tonight. And how we're going to handle all that, and we're going to get them all on one screen anyway. Item 1 on the agenda, substitutes nominated for this meeting and apologies for absence.
Hi, Chair. We've received apologies from councillors Tremaine and Ford, and substituting on their behalf are councillors Porritt and Baines.
Well, welcome back, Stephen, and welcome, Victoria. Nice to have you here. Item 2, members' interests. I need to remind members of the need to declare any disclosable pecuniary interests or other interests they may have in relation to items included on this agenda. You can do this at any time, either now or when the item is appeared. Just got a warning, my Wi-Fi is a bit dodgy tonight. Councillor Durrance.
Same as always, Chair. Just want, for transparency reasons, to state I'm part of the NHP. I'm a trustee on their board and a school governor for 2 schools.
All right, thank you.
Oh, sorry, and I'm also involved with Calderdale National Artistic Society, just in case the conversation kind of moves that way throughout the agenda.
Okay.
Thank you.
Pleasure. Again, my screen's completely blank apart from me and Kirsty and Danielle. So either use the that Councillor Durrance used, or put a comment in the chat if you want to make a point. Admission of the public, we'd encourage it. We are live on Zoom and also live on YouTube. So as our people have stated, you can watch it all again tomorrow. Item 4. The SACRA report. Are you leading on this, Leslie?
Yes, Chair. Well, I'm happy to just present it. It's presented here for information to Scrutiny. We're also joined this evening by Ian Ross, who's the consultant who works on our behalf for SACRA, and also Sheila Hurst, who's obviously a member of the board, but also is the chair of the Calderdale SACRA. And Sheila's happy to present the report. The SACRA is a standing advisory council for religious education. It's a statutory duty of the local authority to have a SACRA. And part of the duties of the advisory council is to produce an annual report, which is here for you this evening. So I know that board members have had sight of it. I'm happy just to hand to Sheila to give a bit more information about the report.
Thank you. I did have my hand up, Chair, to say I wanted to declare an interest as Chair of SACRA for item 4, but I suppose that's declared now. Yeah, I'd just like to commend you this report, really, and just to give a little bit more information. I have presumed everybody has read the report, but there are clear duties around what SACRA do, and you will find that within the report. But I just wanted to say a little bit more about the fact that this report is produced for the academic year. So it pertains to the academic year 1920. And of course, from September 2020 to 21, we're in another academic year. And the report is generally put together in the autumn term after the academic year ends, and is then presented to the DFE and other people. So it sets out very clearly in the report what our duties are, and they include the following areas in the report about the work of SACRA and the council's fulfilment of its obligations, the provision of RE in schools, collective worship and determinations, and the summary of achievements and priorities. And it also includes the examination results, which I'm sure you'll appreciate for 2020 were a little different because there were no examinations, but there is a full breakdown of what we do know about the situation. And we talk about professional development and consultancy, the SACRA membership and their attendance at meetings. And just to note really that there was some disruption to the meetings this year. We only actually had 2 of the 4 meetings. And we also try to provide a bit of information about the relevant national and local context. So I just want to bring your attention to the priorities for 2020, which you will find on page 7 if you've got the document in front of you. I'm not going to read those out again. Sorry, 1920 it is. But I just wanted to add to that regarding embedding the new RE syllabuses. There are now 400 schools across 3 local authorities who use this syllabus. And just to let you know that another authority is joining us with that. And it will be reported a little bit more in detail next year, but it has been amended again since Bradford Authority has joined it, has bought into the syllabus, and we've added a few new units, as well as editing it in line with changes to the early years and foundation stage and SEND information. We're getting a bit of interference here. Can you hear me still? Yeah. As far as planning the RE training for primary schools in particular, obviously with the pandemic, we moved those online, and the majority of course has remained online. And we also had the training around the 3 faiths that is included in the syllabus, and including a Zoom visit from a faith representative. So we've made use of the social media over this pandemic. And with regards to encouraging and supporting RE provision in Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4, it talks about letters reminding secondary schools about their statutory duty to, to provide RE. And we've offered free places on the RE secondary leads network, and that meets 3 times a year. So it gives an indication of the support we're going. And around SACRE and the joint West Yorkshire SACRE that it mentions, we had our first meeting of chairs and vice chairs of all the SACREs in West Yorkshire this last June. And we started to share the good practice and the provision of CPD we do, and sharing it on a bigger scale so we can learn and support from each other. And moving on to page 7 and 8, it just briefly tells you about the priorities for 2021. We have to include that in the report for the previous year. And as a result, again, all of our work has been carried out and been done virtually, and priorities have changed slightly since then. And for example, we carry out effective CPD and share things electronically, and again, the possible online virtual visits to faith communities instead of schools visiting an actual faith community, about including that online. And of course, the actions around these priorities will be reported in the next SACRE report. Just want to point out to you on page 9 the further matters that we looked at, one of which was the Black Lives Matter and our statement around that, and about our the fact, the support and that we've been looking at on the relationship, health and sex education, which of course became statutory in September 2020. And again, more will come out about this in the report next year. We offer a lot of advice and guidance to schools through our consultant, I hasten to add. And we, again, we've worked along with 3 other authorities and SACREs to produce a document for use in schools looking at faith and non-faith perspectives on the elements of RSHE. It's just a document called Voices and Viewpoints, which has just been published. So hopefully you will at some point get a copy of that. And our next guidance priority is looking at the sensitivity to faith document, including advice to schools on religious festivals, symbols, fasting, foods, etc. This was last reviewed in 2015, so it does need looking at and updating again. And just to end really, Sacre is very grateful for the financial support outlined on page 8 that we get from the local authority. But particularly, we're very grateful for the admin support of Debbie Simpson, who keeps us in order and gets all the meetings organised for us. And also for our consultant, Ian Ross, who's with us, for his support, advice and guidance. And what he does is vital to us really as a Sacre, because he offers 20 days of support over the year, including the support and follow up to Sacre meetings. He supports the quality and RE schools through a termly newsletter and providing training in networks and courses. And he also provides up to 10 half-day visits to school to review the RE curriculum and monitor against the RE review toolkit. And there is a Sacre Merit Award that goes alongside that. He does analyse data for us and Ofsted reports and other documentation, if I can say it, supporting and overseeing the production of the annual report that you now see. He's the one, to be honest, who pulls it all together for us. He monitors collective worship through visits to up to 10 primary and secondary schools. Now, some of that hasn't been able to happen this year, but it will continue to happen in an appropriate way when possible. And he also, he consults over any proposals for determinations from collective worship and carries out the admin that goes along with that. And at present, we do have one school with a determination for wholly, broadly Muslim nature of worship. And these will be reviewed before the end of the 2021 academic year. And as well as that, he's absolutely brilliant at responding to phone and email inquiries from schools about the RE curriculum, any legal requirements and specific guidance. So including withdrawal from RE and collective worship. So, I just want to make it clear we would struggle without him, shall I say. So we're very, very grateful. And regarding the financial support, I just want to raise, of course, to reiterate that RE is statutory in all schools. And actually, the data in a report that came out recently does show that having RE on the syllabus, and especially at GCSE level for those students who take it, it does really have a positive impact on pupils' achievement over the national average. So I'll stop there because I know we've got a very full meeting, and we would welcome any questions or comments or thoughts around the report and the additional stuff we've given you. And I'm sure Ian, smiling at him, will respond. Thank you.
Thanks, Sheila. I thought it was a very interesting report. I would like to ask, is there anything that we can be doing or that we're not doing, or should Leslie be doing something that we're not doing? What actions do we seek that we need to do to make any improvements we need to make?
Well, thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Chair. What we do every September, our first meeting in September, is to write a work plan. So we plan out our priorities for the year, and obviously some of those are ongoing because they're statutory responsibilities. But then we take our work plan usually to Leslie to say, to fulfil this work plan, could we have this little bit of extra money? But one of the kind of key things we're working on next year is about virtual visits to places of worship. And we've set up a company that's going to be doing some videos for us and things like that. So I'll probably be going cap in hand to Leslie to say, can we have some extra money for the budget just to do this, please, as a joint activity with 3 other local authorities. But yeah, so what we tend to do is just do that work plan in September, and then we tend to go to Leslie, and obviously then she comes to either to Scrutiny or via other channels to see if she can find us some extra funding.
Can I come in here as well?
got no money.
Well, can I just come in here on that, because I was able to attend the National Association of Sacre's conference this year, and there's a recent report released in May 2021 around funding, and from what that report, and I'm happy to we can share that with everybody. And what it seems to be is they did a big survey of all the local authorities, asking what percentage of the Central School Services block is used to support the work of Sacre. And that ranged from anything from 0% up to 6%. We were all drooling at the thought of 6% of that amount of money. I see Leslie smiling. And currently, Calderdale, if I've got my figures right, it's 1.03% of that budget that comes to Sacre. The recommendation is it should be 2%, at least 2%, and that is actually supported by the government and Nick Gibb, the Right Honourable Minister for Schools for Standards, I think it is, and he supports that as well. So that just gives you a bit of the picture of where we sit nationally. We're very, very grateful it's not 0%, we really are, but equally, in a sense, it would be great, as Ian said, to have more, because if we have more, we can do more and support it, the RE in schools, and support schools better.
Care to comment, Leslie?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we really value the work of Sacre, and certainly at all times, RE is really fundamental. As Sheila said, it's a statutory part of the curriculum, although it's not part of the national curriculum, it is a statutory part of the curriculum. And it's certainly something we look to be supporting as much as we can. And at the moment, I think it's never been more important with the issues that we're facing in society as a whole, let alone within school communities. So we'll certainly look at revisiting the Central Services to Schools block element of that and see what more can be done there. But there are obviously lots of competing pressures around that funding, and I think it's going to be essential that we look at that in the full picture and make sure that we're getting that balance right. But we'll revisit that, Chair.
Councillor Foster-Dott.
Thanks, Chair. I hope you saw my declaration of interest, which was slightly slow off the mark. So apologies. It suddenly struck me that I really want to declare an interest in this one, seeing as I sit on Sacre. So I was looking through the figures, and pleased to note that the decline in entries for the full course is much less than it has been in the past. But I was wondering how that is within. I mean, we've got the sort of the national figures, and obviously we haven't got the most local, we haven't got the most recent ones because there aren't any. But I was just wondering, what advice would you give to a child going into year 9? I might be thinking of one in particular, I shan't say, just so I don't embarrass him, who is thinking about which GCSEs he should choose and why he should choose RS or RE, depending on what they call it in school. I can't keep up. I think it's fundamental that we do still persuade young people to choose this, but they need to be given a reason to do so. So have you any ideas?
Ian, I'm not sure if you want to add anything here, but yes, certainly. I think this is some work that we'll be doing with schools to look at particularly things like the response to the Black Lives Matters, that this is such a relevant area and something that culturally is really important for our young people to grow up with, that really good understanding and the ability to question. I think that's fundamental to RE. It's that ability of children and young people to really question things and to develop their own understanding and their own ideas of belief. So it's certainly something we'll be working with our secondary schools with in particular to look at how this fits in with the pressures that schools and young people are facing at the moment. Ian, I don't know if you want to add anything.
Yes, I mean, it is a piece of work that we're doing with our new secondary associate, who's been contacting all secondary schools to talk about sort of doing some positive promotion around RE and RS or whatever it's called within each department, and kind of sort of what the springboards are from it, as well as, you know, as an academic subject, how it will help you later on in life if you want to become a doctor or various other things like that. But it's, as Leslie said, it's absolutely crucial at this moment that we think about tolerance and understanding, and it's about how we get our students to be understand each other, really. I think during lockdown there has been a kind of, things have become very insular. And what we need to do is actually in schools now is make sure that we get our students to look beyond the horizon, and this is going to be a fantastic way of doing that through the RS curriculum.
And can I come in very quickly? Yeah, very quickly on that, is that research, I'm aware of research that was done within the 20 local authorities that recorded the highest levels of entry for religious studies at GCSE, was the attainments of or entry of pupils in local authorities for GCSE was the pupils got a 40 percentage points higher overall in their grades, and the attainment of grades 9 to 4 in our religious study is 2 percentage points above national average. But what really interested me out of this report is saying that the number of students from Black, Asian and minority ethnic backgrounds in those local authorities, their percentage points achievement was 18 points above the national average. And to me, that is a really strong case, especially in Calderdale, for encouraging secondary schools to put on GCSE courses and hopefully A-level as well.
Thank you. I will pass all that on.
I tend to agree. Councillor Durrance, Danielle.
Sorry if I should know this, but often with the humanities options, when we get into that GCSE level, we offer geography or history. Is there a reason that RE is not in there? Is it just capacity within schools or not? Because it seems history is quite an academic subject, isn't it? And geography tends to be the bit of the split. RE seems to be something, particularly with the comments of in the chat, that would offer, you know, a real success level for some of our children. Also with that embedding information throughout the life that we could feed it in. I just wondered why it wasn't on that kind of package within the humanities split.
I think that varies from school to school, Councillor Durrance, and part of it is to do with the EBAC subjects, and RE doesn't form part of the EBAC subjects. So I think it's all linked up within that. But as Ian was saying earlier, I think, you know, locally we're going to be doing a significant piece of work in trying to raise the profile of RE and all the benefits that Sheila's just pointed out there of not just taking RE, but of the implications then of the impact on other subjects as well. So there'll be a significant work going on with all our schools to raise the profile and encourage take up of that.
Thank you. Anything further, members?
I'd just like to voice appreciation for all the work that's been achieved by Calderdale Sacra in the very difficult circumstances that we've all experienced. And on that budget, they've seemed to have achieved a fantastic amount of things on that budget that they've got at the moment. But I congratulate everybody on that. And thank you.
Can I just point out some of that is achieved through economies of scale when local authorities have joined together, for example, doing the same syllabus. So that helps as well.
I think I'd like to echo David's comments. We seem to get, I don't want to use the phrase bang for a buck, but I think I probably will. Yeah, very good. And thank you to Sheila and Ian and everybody else. If there's nothing further, members, we'll move on. Thank you for that report.
Chair,
Oh,
sorry,
yeah.
I can just say
Of course you can.
it's so kind of.
You're going to have to use chat tonight because, as I said, my screen is completely blank.
Oh, right, okay, that explains why you didn't see my hand go off in the other. Yes, just a very quick comment. Can I just put on record the board's thanks also to Reverend John Helliwell, who has recently stepped down as chair of SACRE. He was chair for, I don't know how many years, donkey's years.
He couldn't remember himself when we asked.
Well, that's why the number is omitted from the report. But yes, he was chair for a very long time, and he did exceptionally good work. And I think it would be right to put this board's formal thanks on record for Reverend John Helliwell as chair of SACRE. Thank you.
Very happy to do that. All right, thank you, members. We're going to move on. Item 5, Calderdale Youth Council. How are we going to do this, Julie? Is Panitha running this? Are you running this, Panitha?
I can do.
Yes, she is, Chair.
Happy to do that. The stage is yours, Panitha.
Thank you. So the Youth Council, we've been meeting up every 2 weeks to discuss and work on topics that we feel that young people are affected by. And recently we've been working on recruitment for the CYC, the Make Your Mark topics, which are mental health and plastic pollution, the ACE Awards, the Flood Awareness event, and we've started considering the future of a West Yorkshire Youth Cabinet as well. Recruitment. So the CYC age range is 12 to 18 years or 25 for a young person with a learning disability. And as most of the members will be leaving in a couple of years, and also with COVID, we've had a decline in number of members, which we believe is mainly due to the break in in-person meetings and the switch to online meetings. We started considering the recruitment more than usual at this point in time. And that's mostly because we believe that there are young people who have a lot of potential and a spirit to represent young people, and that all in all, the Youth Council is a place to get your voice heard and to make a difference. But we believe that the word of a Youth Council is not really out, and we believe that we want to be more out in public than we currently are. So a recruitment video is being made by a member to use to promote by sharing through social media, schools, colleges, and other social events. The video consists of audios from current members' experiences of the CYC and photos of members during events and residential activities. We hope that this video can inspire young people and promote what the Youth Council does. Make Your Mark topics. So the Make Your Mark topics for 2020 include transforming education, mental health, and stop plastic pollution. And the CYC have chosen to especially focus on mental health and stop plastic pollution, as we feel that these are more relevant to Calderdale and that we can make the most difference in these topics. The CYC hopes to work with young minds for long-term and bigger scale plans. However, within Calderdale, we hope to work with the Tough Times reference group to meet up with. At the flood event that we hope to hold, which I'll explain in a bit more detail later, we plan to share plastic pollution information with the community, and we'll be using resources from the further Yorkshire and Humber regions youth councils to share awareness within Calderdale. ACE Awards. The ACE Awards, which stands for Advocates for the Climate and Environment, is an accreditation scheme which both primary and secondary schools, colleges, and sixth forms can apply to. The ACE Award displays a school's commitments to tackling climate change and other environment problems. There are 4 levels of ACE Awards: bronze, silver, gold, and platinum. Due to COVID, the award is being relaunched this September, and the CYC are hoping that more schools will take part in the award and apply for the award. And this is something that we would especially like support with. The the flood event. So the CUIC are hoping to hold a flood event on the 22nd of August this year to raise awareness and to fundraise. The event is called Flood the Valley with Fun, and it will mainly consist of musical performances from local artists, a filmed interview with children from Burnley Primary School, and they were affected in the floods in Calderdale in 2015 and 2019, and other information about flooding and climate change. Activities for younger children, as well as other information, are being provided in separate rooms from the main event. And through this, the information will be shared, and we're hoping that to educate and spread awareness of flooding and the climate change causing this. Money will be raised by charging adults with tickets, a raffle ticket, and donations during the event. The money will be donated to a flood aid charity, which will be confirmed. The West Yorkshire Youth Cabinet. As West Yorkshire has elected its first ever mayor, the CUIC have taken an interest in setting up a West Yorkshire Youth Cabinet that can directly contact and connect to the mayor. The CUIC have considered other authorities within West Yorkshire other than Calderdale, as we believe we would want this board to be representative of all young people all over the region, and this process is yet to take place. And climate change. 2 members of the Youth Council are members of the Climate Emergency Committee and work closely with them on representing young people's voices on climate, including green spaces. They have been asked about spaces for young people as part of a supplementary planning document to be part of a bigger council document. And they had suggested that, especially with the closure of youth clubs and services, which are safe spaces for young people, where there's some kind of a cover to stay dry and warm is needed. We are also working with the new Climate College in Todmorden and with Pennine Prospects on access to Calderdale's countryside by young people. I think that's open to any questions as well.
Happy to take questions, Benita, are you? Councillor Baines. Stephen.
Thank you, Chair. That was an absolutely fantastic report, Benita. I'm really impressed by it, and I think you're going to go far.
Thank you.
But you know, your report as well was good, but one thing that I didn't see was in the past, I always remember that it was a major thing that 1 or 2 of the youth council actually went down to the Palace of Westminster and was entertained with the Speaker of the House of Commons. Does that still happen? And just nobody wanted to go this year, or is it something that's been stopped for some reason?
I'm not too sure when. I think I joined a few years ago, but I'm not sure when that happened. We used to go down to the youth was I've forgotten the name, to do a debate yearly, but this
the Youth Parliament.
Yes.
But we did it on Zoom this year. Last year around March time, I think.
Right. So it's more the pandemic that sort of put a block on. Yeah. Good. It's I just think if it had been stopped, we could perhaps lobby for you on your behalf with the members of Parliament, etc. Right. Thank you.
Councillor Durns, Danielle.
Hi, yeah, that was a great report, thank you. I noticed that the recruitment criteria was up to age 16 or 25 with a learning disability. So I was going to ask, is that a learning disability or is that with an educational need? And I wondered how that was delivered, because between 16 and 25, it's quite noticeable, that age. And I wonder if that kind of shares somebody's information that they might not choose to share themselves, if that makes sense. So whether they could make that a little bit more inclusive around the wording in order to engage more people, but without necessarily giving some information out that they might not necessarily want to share with the youth council as you're going through the criteria.
Yeah, currently no one's, I'm not sure how to too much how that's happening, because most people do leave around age 16, even though the criteria is 18, just because of A levels, and they become more busy, and also with travel time. So I'm not too sure, but I can get back to you on that one.
No worries, thank you so much.
Care to comment, Leslie, on that one or not?
Sorry, Chair, I'm having difficulty unmuting then. Yes, I'll certainly pick that up with Pranitha outside of this meeting, and because I think it's a really valid point that it would unnecessarily identify perhaps that somebody has an additional need. But I think also there are ways we can also support with the recruitment. And I know that following one of Pranitha's reports to this board previously, I shared the information with all schools, and I know certainly that one of the school was really keen to ensure that their students could engage with the council and join as councillors. So it's certainly something we can pick up, and I'll follow up with the youth council outside of this meeting.
Councillor Foster Dot.
Thanks, Chair. Thank you for your presentation, Pranitha. I think it was really, really interesting. I'm glad to know what you're up to as a youth council. I'm just wondering if you could possibly share the details of the flood event with us, by emailing, maybe email Leslie and or Leslie or one of the team can email it out to the team, to us as a panel. I think it would be really useful, really interesting to be able to get involved in that if we can. And also details on how to apply to the youth council as well, because I'm sure we've all got young people that we can share that around with, or pass it on to, or try and garner some interest from. So it would be really useful to have that information. Thank you.
I can email that out later. Thank you.
That was one of my questions, is where is the event, the Flood the Valley with Fun event?
It's taking place at the Orange Box.
Oh, right, okay, excellent. Well, certainly you should send us all an invite. We all know where that is. And just one more thing for me while I wait for members is, under the ACE award, you said you were looking for our support. What can we do to help you, Pranitha?
I think like maybe a statement just saying that you would about what it actually is, because we did contact schools about the ACE awards, but we didn't get much of a response. Maybe if we had like a statement saying that you would support it as well, or about it, maybe that would be useful. But I think I should ask the members of CYC as well about what they want in particular.
CYC, okay. Well, I'm certain that can be arranged, Leslie.
Yes, Chair, we can sort that out. And again, as I said, Pranitha, I think we can work together to really promote this. I know we constantly get back feedback from schools that climate change is at the top of the agenda for young people. So I think we can do a sort of a joint campaign on encouraging people to join, to take up the ACEs, but also to recruit to the youth council as well. So we'll work on that jointly.
Thank you.
Right. We see Councillor Foster's comment that many of us are school governors, that we could certainly help with that, Pranitha. I'm sure we can. And I'd like to see us do that if that's at all possible. That's a really good idea. Anything further, members? I as I say, it's no good use waving at me. Pranita, thank you very much for that report. Excellent. Giving us something to think about as well. And maybe we'll all see you at the Orange Box on October the 22nd, if we're not all off on a cruise, which we've been allowed to do so from today. So again, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Item 6, members. Youth services. Progress since the detailed scrutiny review. Director.
Rob, Sharon and John Greenwood are going to cover this item, Chair. Is Rob there?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm here, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Rob.
Yeah. Chair, if it's okay with you, what I would rather do is just do a little bit of the background to this report, talk about a couple of the key points, and then open it up to questions, because we've got Sharon here and John here. And again, I know it's quite a detailed report, it covers quite a lot, but again, in terms of if members have any specific questions, we could go to questions fairly early, if that would be helpful. But just to give a little bit of background, as you said in your intro to this item, this report follows a detailed scrutiny review in December 2019 in relation to the youth service. A number of recommendations were made there. We've updated in terms of the recommendations what progress we've made. But what we've also tried to do in this report is to try and give an overview of youth services through the pandemic as well. As people will be aware, from March 2020, I suppose the world as we know it changed, and all of our services for youth services were ended. Face-to-face work was ended, and we had begun doing work virtually. So some of the key points from the report are that very quickly, and I think it's all credit to the youth service, we really quickly turned around and developed a virtual offer, which you'll see further on in the report, within the youth services, and that was very well received by the young people that we were working with. On the 1st of June 2020, Cabinet approved the proposed restructure of the youth services that we've been working on for a while at that point, and a restructure of the service began in July 2020 and is now concluded. So a lot of work has taken place there. Lots of consultation with young people, with staff, with key stakeholders, and with the voluntary and community sector to get to the point of the review being concluded. Various different elements of the service have now changed as in relation to the recommendation from scrutiny. So the youth and family team have now moved towards a more targeted offer and referral. The targeted dispatch area have started operating in high-risk areas and have been doing that throughout lockdown. And again, that's proven to be really successful as well. We've now got an Orange Box website where we can share information with young people, and that's proven to be successful. And we've now developed a clear outcomes framework, which was one of the recommendations for young people. And that's now well embedded within our services as well. So in the report, we've talked about the restructure and the timeline, talked about the response to COVID, and then we've talked about the response to the recommendations. I'm more than happy to talk through the report in more detail, but if people would prefer to go to questions, myself, John and Sharon can answer any questions that you have.
I think we'll go to questions. I'll start while members are still thinking about it. Page 71 on the whole page, the numbers of attendance. Are we happy with those numbers? Are they what we're expecting? Are they less than we're expecting? Are they more than we're expecting? How can we make them more?
Is that, sorry, Chair, is that page 5 on the actual report? Because I've not got the full pack in front of me. Is that the one where it says?
Start at 2.1.5 and go to 2.1.8.
It is also number 5 as well on the right-hand side.
Okay. Sharon, John, did you want to respond to that one?
Yeah, I can. I mean, I think what we'd have to say is it was uncertain because we were working through lockdown and COVID. I would say it's probably, in terms of numbers of people we managed to contact, is less than we would hope. But I think given the circumstances, we did really well. We had a lot of people deployed to parks and streets in the early days of lockdown, and met lots of young people with the aim to try and get them to go home and comply to the rules. I think the online uptake was good initially, but dropped off because I think people got, I think like all of us, Zoom fatigue of looking at people on the screen all the time. And I think what we're really getting out of young people at the moment is they're keen, eager and ready to do things more in person. And I think we'll, over the next sort of year going forward, we'll be looking at trying to increase that as much as we can.
I think, Chair, one of the things that the numbers don't reflect is the volume of work, not just because these, I suppose, outputs, but again, in terms of some of the outcomes. So again, one of the things that we did very early on in the lockdown is we made arrangements with the police and community safety where our outreach workers were out on the streets every day. There was a regular meeting every day where we were tagged in hotspots, and our youth workers were out making contact with young people, trying to encourage them to stay in. A lot of that work isn't reflected in the numbers because it's not the work that we were recording. So there's a whole range of other work that's gone on beyond there that actually is probably not reflected in the numbers because we couldn't and we weren't recording that level of detail at that point.
Okay, there's a whole question around outcomes that I'll come to in a minute. After Councillor Riveron, Helen.
Thank you, Chair. Another question I want to ask, but particularly I'm just thinking back to the presentation we've just had by Faith from the Youth Council. I think she commented on the loss of safe spaces by the reduction in youth work provision. Now, clearly things have changed beyond recognition through COVID, but I wondered whether or not is that need for safe space something that we've lost? Or is there any way we can sort of still be able to provide that?
I'll come in here. In terms of the orange box, yes, we did lose that safe space during COVID because we had to close the building down in line with the regulations. However, as those have changed, we have started opening up the orange box again, and we are getting young people back in. So this week we're starting our group work back up. We've got young people that can come in for appointments within the orange box, and we've started our commissioning process for our open access to be delivered by the voluntary and community sector. So again, that will have provision within the areas where young people can access a safe space. So although it has been limited to COVID, we are in a position now where we're opening up again to allow young people to have that space.
Okay, Helen.
If I could just, it might not be something I can answer now, maybe it needs to be another issue, but would be interested to know on how far that process has gone in terms of commission to the voluntary sector. So I don't know if you can give an update now whether that needs to be perhaps something at another meeting, but I think it's something we'd like to follow up.
Yeah, I can give you an update that 3 contracts have been awarded. So 3 contracts have been awarded, and that delivery will start as of 1st of August, sorry.
Oh, that's very encouraging. I was going to ask how realistic the 1st of August timescales were.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Baines, Stephen.
Thanks, Chair. My question, I actually haven't received many issues about the closure of the assets, which there was a major reduction in them and closure of buildings, etc. But the only one that I received complaints about and still receive complaints about is the Mixenden Activity Centre. And quite a lot of people have told me that that really did make a difference for a lot of young people. And some of the people who've contacted me are young people who think it was a retrograde step. Is there any chance of sort of revisiting that to see if that can be reopened?
Did you want to, Councillor Baines, in terms of the restructure for the youth service, that wasn't, the Mixenden Centre wasn't part of that as well, because that's under a different direction. That doesn't fit under Children and Young People Services. So that was, we only had a very tiny element at the Mixenden Activity Centre. That was, that restructure, that closure was determined by another directorate.
Which directorate was it then?
I'm looking to Julie now, because I can't think what it was called.
Yeah, if I can come in here, please, Councillor Baines. It's Mixton Activity Centre was run by Sports and Leisure Services, particularly given the reservoir. We're actually looking at working with West Yorkshire Police about increasing the use of that centre for young people in the area. But we're just talking that through with West Yorkshire Police at the moment. It has closed due to COVID. But yeah, there's more work in progress to see whether it will be open under a different guise. Yeah, because it wasn't just the young people of Mixenden area that benefited from it. I think it was the whole of Calderdale because of the special resources which they had there. Yeah, they had a climbing wall, and I've seen parents bring their young people up there to use the climbing wall. It's got lots of facilities. Obviously, it's got the reservoir and lots of bikes and different bits and pieces of equipment up there, and the use on the reservoir with canoes and things. So it isn't something we want to lose from the borough, but I think we are in discussions with West Yorkshire Police about the future use of that site. Great. Thanks very much, Julie. Okay.
I think I'm the only member of this committee that's actually swam in that reservoir. Don't tell the police. Councillor Foster, Dot.
Thanks, Chair. I completely understand the need to reduce the outgoings by reducing the use of buildings. But how, in that case, is youth services being delivered elsewhere other than at the Orange Box? I'm thinking particularly about Strawberry Bridge, who've lost. I mean, we've got the Foundry Street Centre. It is still there. It is mothballed. It's not being used for anything at the moment. We really want to keep that as a venue in Strawberry Bridge because it's the only public venue we have that's owned by the council. And we're very short on wheelchair accessible spaces in Strawberry Bridge as well. So we're really keen to keep that, but you know how. And I'm sure the same goes for other areas as well. But I think it would be really helpful if you could explain how the youth provision is being delivered to youths around Calderdale when they're not coming into the Orange Box. If that makes any sense at all. I know what I was trying to say, but I didn't say it very well, sorry.
I'm happy to, as part of the review that Cabinet did, it was a recommendation that the open access was delivered by the voluntary and community sector and that we made best use of buildings. So that's why the provision is going out to the sector to deliver. And as part of that, we have a clear contract in place about what provision needs to look like. So that there needs to be some outreach provision, but there also needs to be some open access that's universal provision. And we have done that as a pilot tender because at the moment we're unsure in terms of a full tender what that provision needs to look like moving forward. Because we're still waiting on the overall outcomes for young people from COVID and what that will look like in the future. So we're doing it. The tender that we're doing is a pilot at the moment, and as I've said, that's due to start in August. But in relation to the provision that we've got going at the moment, John will be able to kind of tell you in terms of the outreach service that we've got that's delivered by the Internal Youth Service. If I bring John in.
Yeah, so the majority of the service is delivering what you'd consider one-to-one support with vulnerable young people, as we were sort of requested to do. But we do have 8 members of staff who are on contracts to work in the evenings and weekends, and they're deployed to areas that need that extra bit of youth work presence, where there might be some problems or issues. Such as antisocial behaviour and what have you. So, and they're out 3 to 4 evenings a week in teams of 2, or sometimes 3, depending on how the staffing works out. And they're doing that, kind of meeting young people, finding out what's going on for them, and trying to signpost and support. Does that answer your question?
I think so, thank you. Yeah, I'm just sort of concerned that kids who don't qualify for the sort of the specialised one-to-one support, but are maybe just under the radar and could use input. I don't want to see them missing out. So
no, I think just to add as well, just the teams, whilst we're calling them detached, a couple of little projects that they've set up, one in North and East and one down in Tonbridge for the summer period, the summer holidays, is to just set up a little sort of project around football, just to bring young people together to a particular venue, and then be able to offer them kind of support, discussions and engagement all in one spot, so to speak, rather than having to tour around and find them. So that's like a bit of an added extra we've put on through the summer period.
Thank you.
I think the Adam's made a comment in the chat. I think the buildings was I think the point was, the word that's used I think 5 times on the first page is targeted. It's about targeted interventions rather than broad-based open access. I think that's the point. My point about targets would be, we talk on the second but the 4th bullet point, targeted workers continue. With youth service and family team have moved to a targeted offer. This targeted detached team, where do you put the target? How do you decide which target you're going to hit? Does that make sense? I'm sure it does. What is the target? We've got targeted people doing targeted things. What's the target?
In terms of our targeted youth and family team, the target is young people who've got additional vulnerabilities and needs for support, and that is assessed through the early intervention panel, and then those referrals are made. In terms of the targeted deployable detached team, actually we're guided by others on that, in terms of where local community safety partnerships identify where there are areas of concern, then we deploy people into those geographical areas to kind of get involved with offering that support.
All right, so it's part of the early help pathway, then early intervention strategy, which is what it should be, really.
Yeah, I think, Councillor Russell, one of the things that we did as part of the restructure, and I think people will be aware of it, is that we had across children's services a whole range of different services that could argue were in early intervention targeted. So what we've now done is we've brought that under one service manager, which is Sharon, and actually what we're starting to do now is we're getting a really clear offer for young people, and we're trying to reduce the amount of duplication, starting to reduce the amount of different people who are involved with young people where we don't need to be. So I think right across the board now, in terms of early intervention and targeted, we're starting to see a really clear offer. And I think one of the things that it talks about in the report is we're now making really good use of our early intervention panels for youth work, and making sure that the young people who need one-to-one support are getting that, but it's the right people who are getting it at the right time. And also what we're trying to do as well is, where we're doing targeted work, is we're being very specific around what it is that we want to achieve. So we're not just doing a targeted work that will stay open for 2 or 3 years. We are doing very, very focused piece of work about a specific intervention, with a view to all of our young people being able to access universal services in the future, really, because what we don't want to do is we don't want to create dependence. We're trying to move away from that dependence culture where we can move people down that continuum into universal services. And what we will find, I think, as COVID relaxes further, is the voluntary and community sector are going to be able to step into that space in a much more rigorous way, because during lockdown, a lot of the face-to-face work hasn't been able to happen, and a lot of the funding that was available hasn't been available during lockdown either. Now we're starting to open up, we're starting to see various different funds opening up which the voluntary and community sector can link in with, and then we can hopefully guide young people from a targeted intervention into an early help type of intervention.
I just mentioned the three. I'll go to Councillor Derwents first. Councillor Derwents, Danielle.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I just wanted to question, because once, even at the early help stage, there's a recognised need for them to get to the early help stage. So I was wondering about the more universal services. I was wondering if, whilst they haven't been available, if there's been an increase, and we're looking at more the universal services, I guess, and I mean this in the kindest way, but implementing kind of preventative measures before we get to a family in need or a young person in need. Because although early help appears to sound like early help, there's still a need for them to get to the point of becoming referred for the early help hub. So I just wondered if that would be, that has increased whilst those other more open services haven't been as available.
I would agree that there is that what I call early help, that actually before they actually become known to the early help services, and we have seen an increase due to early intervention panel because there hasn't been them open access services available, but that's been across the partnership in relation to children and families being able to access some of those services. But some of the services have been maintained. So the children's centres, family support have maintained their drop-ins, although they've been virtually, and they are universal services. The parenting courses have been running virtually online. And again, they're an universal offer to all parents to access. But, we have to agree that we have seen an increase because of some of that face-to-face open kind of first level intervention hasn't been available.
Helen, Councillor Ridwan.
Thank you, Chair. Really sort of links to a comment Danielle made and to Sharon's answer, that sort of, as well as helping people back out of needing the targeted services, we want to stop them falling into needing those as well. I have got reservations about the emphasis on targeted services, because there are always good people who just miss out on needing those. But there was a reason why we got here, and and that was, as you said in the review, I think, Chair, the service had lost its way. Well, I hope that that we will, through the community voluntary sector, be able to retain those open access services and those safe spaces that we heard about before. And I think perhaps we can perhaps have a follow-up and see what impact that is having, because I think the only way, to me, we're going to ensure that people, have that service they need and stop them needing the more targeted services if that universal service is available. As I'm not saying we should go back to how it was, because we know that didn't work, but I think perhaps we do need to, follow up and monitor how far the voluntary sector is able to meet that need.
Yeah, I think we had this discussion before about voluntary sector and the rest of it. I was quite encouraged by what Rob said. You'll be surprised to learn. He mentioned the three key words for me: target, focus, and outcomes. I'm very pleased to see we've got an outcome framework, and that we will be measuring outcomes. And even though the results, I'll give you the excuse of the pandemic, won't be available until 21-22, but I think that's very encouraging. I think the frustrating thing about the youth service, we can never measure any outcomes. And once we start to do that, we'll get a better idea of what we're doing. I just have one or two other quick things. You say the orange box is the only building used by the service now. Is that the only building being paid for? We've already had two other buildings mentioned tonight. Are we paying for any of the buildings out of the youth service or the CYP budget?
Not through the young people, not through the youth service budget, no.
Or through CYP budget? The one that Councillor Foster mentioned, for instance, in Silverbridge.
That's not through, not that I'm aware, definitely not through young people, youth service budget. I don't know if it's anything through young people.
It was a few years ago that all buildings came away from the youth service and went under CAFM. So we weren't, even before the restructure, we didn't actually have budgets for buildings in that sense. And the Orange Box is the only building we're currently using.
All right, that's good. Outcomes. Recommendation 2, 3.21. I was suspicious of words like this. All casual contracts in the youth service have now ended. And then the second sentence is, this is for a targeted detached element of the service. So for the not targeted detached element of the service, are there any?
No, just to clarify on that, Chair, is it's specifying that the 12-hour per week contract, which is our minimum contract, are all within that out of hours team. All of our target youth and family workers have contracts which are in excess of 12 hours. Does that answer your question? We have no casual contracts within the youth service. We still have casual contracts within the play service because they get a different type of funding which requires us to use casuals to be able to make it operate.
Okay. All right. I know Councillor Collins would be, if she was here tonight, would be very disappointed about the lack of progress on the transport. But I think again, COVID's giving you an out for that one, and we'll probably need to wait till next year to make sure that we haven't forgotten to do it. And recommendation 9 about a dedicated social media officer, that it's a shame. I think that probably hasn't been done while we've been in the perfect environment for social media. Do we make use of the council's communication team? They seem pretty good.
To be honest, I think whilst we didn't have a dedicated social media person, the service itself managed a variety of different social media platforms, and some of those are probably ones that the council wouldn't use, such as TikTok and House Party and various other stuff. Our staff were going on platforms where the young people were, rather than sort of the more readily used ones these days. So I think during the period of the pandemic, we did really well to engage with people through social media. But now we're sort of coming out the other end of it. We want to have a kind of structured and planned approach to making best use of that member of staff in the Orange Box to take it to the next level, really.
Yeah, just to add to that, that we have now got a site manager for the Orange Box, and part of their role is to lead on that social media offer for young people.
Okay, good. But there's not. Oh, Councillor Holdsworth, Sue.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a quick question on the social media post. It was flagged up as possibly an apprenticeship role for a young person. And I just wondered if there were, I know that it said it was covered by another team, but is it now likely that you will look for a social media apprentice? Because I noticed in one of the other reports that in terms of numbers, there are very few apprenticeships for the reason that people can't be supervised if they're working from home and so forth. Is that going to be revisited? Because I think that would be a brilliant opportunity for a young person.
Yeah, Councillor, I can honestly say in my supervision with Sharon just the other day, we had exactly that conversation. It is something we were looking at pursuing. One of the wider approaches we're taking with the Orange Box is around how can we get young apprentices in on a range of different things to learn in terms of the workplace. and particularly try to tie that in to our care leavers and children looked after as well, to support them in the world of work. So yes, that's definitely a plan.
Good. Adam, Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just briefly, I think there's three things really that have really influenced the way that the service has been run over the last couple of years, and I think two of them have been mentioned, and that's COVID and the Scrutiny review, which was an excellent piece of work, and I think has really sort of helped us to shape the service and drive the improvements we want to see. But the third one is money, and you know, like all directorates, we've had to make some quite big cuts and savings over the last few years. You know, and all councils have. And unfortunately, the youth service is one of the few areas of CYP that, you know, we don't have a statutory duty to deliver the universal open access services ourselves. So unfortunately, you know, it's one of the areas we have had to look at making some savings, and that's the case for all councils, you know, across the country have cut youth services, open access, universal youth services massively, I'm afraid. And so, you know, I understand the point that Councillor Rivron and others make about having to move to targeted services, and that some young people may lose out as a result of that. But I'm afraid, you know, that is the sort of reality of the situation, where you have a diminishing budget, that you have to start targeting the limited resources that you have on those children and young people who really need it most. And I think, you know, there are examples of the voluntary sector doing a very good job of engaging children and young people across the borough. You know, like think of places like Himat and The Space up in Rastrick, which I've visited, and have sort of demonstrated that they can do a really good job. And I think what we need to do as a council is to commission a bit of that, but also support the voluntary sector in sort of, you know, potentially making more sort of funding bids than they already are doing to get in extra funding to deliver, you know, in an even better service than they are now, because those voluntary organisations can often tap into pots of money that we can't as a council as well, which is an added advantage of doing it that way around. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Adam. I tend to agree with what you've just said, actually. Anything else on this, members? In summing up, I'd say I think COVID has prevented us from having, under normal circumstances, I'd be expecting the 21-22 report now, and obviously that's not going to happen. It'll be interesting to see how we come out of it. I think we've done the right things, and if we do them in the right order, I think it'll work out properly. Thank you, John and Sharon, for your contributions. Item 7, members.
That's me again, Chair.
Of course it is, Rob.
What I was going to suggest, Chair, is I'll do, because this report's been a couple of times now, so this is an update report based on a report that I think came last December. We started off by talking about external residential placements, then we talked about external fostering placements, but what we've included this time is just a general update in terms of fostering and a little bit of an update in terms of our outreach team, which I think is something that people will be interested in. And obviously the elected members asked for a little bit of an update in terms of field heights and our plans to open 2 new children's homes as well. So we've got a bit of an overview of everything in there. Hopefully people will have read the report. What we have done is we've organised for Becky, who's been involved in this report, and I think people will have met previously, to be here to answer questions. We've got Guy, who's responsible for all of our children's homes, here to ask any questions. And we've also got Lucy Kavanagh, I think somewhere, who's our youth service manager for Permanence and Sufficiency, who will take over the lead for fostering our over 18 leaving care service and the CTS teams as well, here to answer any questions. So again, I'm more than happy to go through the report if people would find that useful, but equally I'm more than happy to just open up to questions, because I know sometimes that works better for scrutiny.
We'll go straight to questions, I think, Rob, and as our members are always shy, so I'll start. That was a very interesting report. I'll start with the big picture first. How are we getting on with our field as was? And Councillor Wilkinson at Council on last Wednesday night said that we'd purchased the home already, as well as field house. So that's two things I'd like to know. How are we getting on with what we're going to call our field nowadays, and how we're making progress on our residential homes?
Could I ask Guy to do the field heights, and then if I pick up on the pitch of the new homes, if that's okay? Guy, do you want to talk about field heights and where we are now?
Yep. Evening, Chair.
Hi, Guy.
Field heights. Are you all right?
Yeah, good.
It's building momentum, really. We've got 3 young people in placement at the moment. Like any new start of any relaunch, it's always going to have its challenges, but we're working quite closely with placements, and we're looking to move a 4th one in towards the latter stages at summer. And what we're trying to do is slow the process down enough so we can get the right blend of people coming in. There's kind of been some new learns from staff team up there, but signs, are looking really promising, and I'm pretty confident going forward. What we've emulated across the service certainly can be emulated there. I just think it's just adapting from what it was when it was sleep on it as a short break service, adjusting back to a children's home. But the pleasing thing to kind of note and certainly feedback is that now we have a state-of-the-art provision that probably exceeds what most providers can provide it, in local authorities nationally. So that's something, I'm immensely proud of. And I'm not just saying that because I work for the authority. I'm saying that because I've worked in children's homes for a long time, and they don't get much better than the appearance of that place. So that's really promising.
I think the other thing that would be worth adding here, Chair, is that I suppose one of the things that we've identified very quickly is that the strength of the partnership around field heights is really strong. So the work we do with the police, the work we do with health is really, really strong. And I think what we've done is, because we've got such good provision across the board, opening field heights has given us a bit of a leapfrog really there. We've jumped in with good intentions and good ambitions and good partnerships. So I think that's starting to really pay dividends. As Guy mentioned, we've got another young person who's due to move in very shortly. Again, we're trying to match the children really carefully so we don't end up with 5 young people who come into a home all together, and actually what happens is it doesn't work because we haven't done the matching carefully enough. So we're trying to take it a step at a time. But I think in terms of where we are and where we anticipate would be, I think we're not far off being where we thought we would be at this time, actually.
That's very encouraging. I might want to just have a look around at some stage. What about the purchase of the new product, the new place, or one of the new places? Just going to shut my window.
Yeah, so the Cabinet agreed, I think it was, I can't think of the date now, the Cabinet agreed that we could purchase 2 new 3-bedded homes for children. So we've been working on that really close with CAFM. We would have had somebody here from CAFM tonight, but actually both Alan, Lee and Stephen, who's been working with us, are both on leave today, so they couldn't come, but they would have wanted to come. So we've been working.
They might have been a bit upset about the last time they came, were they not? I don't know. Maybe
I don't think so, Chair.
Right, good.
I wouldn't like to comment, but so what we've been doing, working really close with CAFM, we've also got a board that we've set up that Julie chairs, really to make sure that we're driving forward the purchase of the properties. The current position as we stand today is we've identified 2 properties and we've put in an offer for 2. But we've put in an offer pending planning permission and pending a full evaluation of the work that would be needed to refurbish the property. As people will be aware, if it's a children's home, there are some additional requirements that we need to be mindful of things like sprinklers, different arrangements in terms of fire doors and things like that. So before we go any further, we've asked for a detailed assessment of the likely costs of a refurbishment, which CAFM are working with us on really closely. If we continue, I think that will, it feels really positive at the moment. And what I would say is we got permission to start searching for properties just at the point where the housing market went through the roof. So we've had some, I think it's fair to say, some real challenges. I think we've identified well over 100 properties that we've looked at. The vast majority of them we discounted fairly quickly because they didn't meet our spec. Some of them it was to do with location, some of it was to do with the fabric of the building, some of it was to do with the proximity to other places where we didn't want a building. I think we got it down to probably 50, 60 guy will probably be able to tell the numbers better where we wanted to have a closer look. We've been to view a number of properties, so Guy and colleagues from CAFM have been to view a number of properties, and we're now comfortable with two that we've got, or two that we've identified, to the point where we've agreed and we put an offer in and that offer's been accepted. But we can't move on now until we know what the outcome of the assessment would be in terms of what the properties would cost to refurbish. I think the other thing that's just worth mentioning here is that at the same time that we're looking for new residential homes, the private sector are looking at homes as well. So we have to be quite careful in terms of what we say currently in terms of the properties that we've put in the offers for, because I'm aware at the moment we're just at the offer stage and we don't want to lose properties because people become aware of the fact that we've got offers in on buildings and they may put in a higher offer. So we feel we've got two good options there that we could look at. We're just waiting now for that detailed breakdown of what the building works would look like. And then hopefully we'll be ready to go and start to look at how we do the refurb and progressing the work more rigorously as well. I think one of the things that's been really helpful is to have the board that oversees this, because it means that everything that we need to do is happening at the same time. So planning permission has already been, we already started to get advice around planning permission. Does planning permission need to happen, and if so, what's it look like? So that board is really helpful in terms of keeping that momentum going, and it feels like we've probably had a difficult start, but I think we're coming on quite well now.
I'm really quite encouraged because I had a feeling when we first proposed this and we finally got the money that, given everything you said about the state of the housing market, etc., it was going to be a bureaucratic nightmare. And if you're making real progress, then I'm really pleased. Yeah, I'm really pleased. Let's hope we can carry on with that. Credit where credit's due. Nobody else is asking a question, so I'm going to go again. 25 children and young people currently placed in externally commissioned residential care permission. 13 of these placements, 5 are in a specialist provision, and 1 is in a time limited place. What about the other 7? Are they the ones that we're thinking we're going to bring back eventually?
Becky, did you want to answer that one?
I think I don't think that those are the ones that are coming back, because those children, the 5 in specialist provision, that is due to their complex needs, which are, I think those are the ones that are joint funded with health. So it's viewed that those are the right placements for them. At this point in time, the establishment of the external placement panel, together with the permanence panel, which we established all at the right about the same time in mid-April, means that we do look at these children and young people on a regular basis. I mean, every month they are all individually discussed. And what for those 5 in specialist provision, where we know that we have got health involvement and concerns about what type of provision they need further on, post 18, then we have really strengthened our relationship with adult care and involving them now in discussions for these young people who are aged between 16 and 17. So we're starting the conversations much earlier to ensure a seamless transition from children's to adult care.
Sorry, Councillor. I think Becky misheard you. The 7 that are not in specialist provision would be the ones that we review all of these cases every month, but they're the 7 would be more likely where there would be some movement back to Calderdale. I suppose one of the things we've done since the last time we spoke to Scrutiny is we've been really clear with our teams and our managers that our ambition to bring children back to Calderdale is key. And we talked about it just at a meeting this morning. I think there's a real strong view now, and I think it's that we've got a really significant buy-in from the whole of the service that actually children are best cared for within Calderdale wherever possible. There are examples, and in that 7, there are at least 2 examples where children need to be away from Calderdale for safeguarding reasons. And we obviously we need to manage it on a really robust basis. But where there are opportunities to bring young people back, they're the ones that will get discussed at the panel. And we have a really clear process there in terms of how do we bring them back. And I think one of the things that we do really well is that we have the intent. So you identified the 25 placements, 13 of them are external, 12 are internal. In the internal provision, which is really interesting, we still have movement there as well. So some young people may go home from that. Some people may go on to foster care, which we're seeing more of now. But in that 12, we've got a block contract for 9 places that we have currently. That gives us a lot more flexibility than we had previously. So what we try to see is we try to see them 9 block places sitting alongside our residential provision and our fostering provision. And that gives us a greater level of sufficiency than we possibly had before as well. So we can make the right choices for the right children at the right time.
Yeah, I was going to come on to the 9 in a block in a moment. I'll come to you in a second, Doc. I've lost my point, but there's 9 in this with this one provider. What size homes are they in?
They are, as most private providers are, they tend to be 1 to 3 bedded homes. They have got some 1 and some 2, but they tend to be 1, 2 and 3. I don't think they've got any provision that's bigger than 3. And Guy would probably know better, but I don't think they've got any provision that's above 3 beds.
And the other 3?
The other 3, they would be with local private providers where we've taken them off our White Rose framework. So they will be on the White Rose framework where we can contract with them, and they're assessed through White Rose framework to see that they're a good quality. And you can only be on the framework if you are good or outstanding provision.
Yeah, I'll come back to that. Dot, Councillor Foster.
Thanks, Chair. So it's sort of a comment and a couple of questions, really. So looking at 2.11, can blue intervention, it says sort of suspended on the bar chart. Could somebody please just explain what that means? Does that mean that they're sort of still on the books, but conversations aren't happening with them daily? That's how I read that, but I'd be grateful if you could clarify. As far as the purchase of new homes is concerned, I'm really pleased to hear that this is going ahead. I think it's going to be very useful. Can I request that ward councillors are kept fully informed of what's happening? We do get questions from members of the public when they hear whispers on the grapevine from time to time, and it is always useful to be able to answer those where we can. And the third one has just disappeared out of my head, so I'll come back to it. Thank you.
Can I answer question 2 first, in terms of, yes, absolutely, ward councillors will be kept up to date, because I think it's really important. And I think there's something really important about us as a wider group in terms of the messaging for local residents as well. These are very small children's homes with a maximum of 3 children. And we've discussed at our board meeting, actually, sometimes the term children's homes conjures up a whole range of different connotations for residents. So we need to make sure we can reassure and be really proactive there. Once we get to the point where we are clearly going to move forward with a property, what we'll do then is we'll contact ward councillors, but we'll also set up a process where we can engage with residents as well and try and reassure and make sure that that's happened. And Guy and his team have got quite a lot of experience of doing that and managing expectations of residents and being able to talk them through what it is that we want to do. So we'll do that on a really clear process once we get to that next point, really. In terms of the suspended, Guy, did you just want to talk about that in terms of the category of suspended from the outreach team?
What's that? Sorry.
Yeah. So on the graphs, we've got the high intervention, medium intervention, low intervention, and suspended.
Yeah. Yeah, the suspended part of the bar graph, it's not like it's been discounted or anything like that. What it means is that these families, we've gotten from a position of difficulty to where we kind of put them through, you know, a rag range, so they go from extreme case, from a red case, and they move down the colours to a green. And what we do, it's a bit like a holding bay in blue. It doesn't mean that we're going to do targeted work for that family, but we hold them for a period of time in the event that they need us for a consultation, or that one moment in time where they have a bit of a wobble. We're on end up phone for them, and we're kind of guided by them. So if we got to a 6-month period, which is quite a long period of time anyway, told someone, we would then we would foreclose that case, really. But it's just really, it's a lifeline for these families who originally start off on the edge of care, and we try to hold their hands and step down that process with them. But we don't want to just kind of discount them at green and think, oh yeah, they're finished, the deal's finished, and we know that they're in a safe place. What we want to do is just add that little bit of a buffer for the families to feel that, add a little bit of confidence to their thinking, really. And in the event of an issue, we can be on the end of a phone, really supporting, you know, even through just a consultation or an idea. And it's something that really works well. It's something that really we do in children's homes. We always retain a period of 6 months of consultation when they move on to the next placement, because we're essentially the custodians of a lot of information for people, and we want to be able to share that with people, you know, in the times of difficulty.
Yeah. This approach is part of a wider approach that we do really right across the service now, and in most local authorities we would call it step up and step down. What that means for families is you usually have to get to a crisis point before you get a further intervention. What we call it is step in, step out. So they might on one day need to step into a service for a very short period of time, and then they will step back out. But they don't need to reach a crisis to do that. It's a very for families, it feels much more reassuring. You don't need to get to a crisis point before an intervention is offered. And actually, you don't need to have resolved the crisis either before that intervention can be lessened. So it's a really simple way, but I think, as Guy says, it works really well for our families. And sometimes just knowing that somebody's at the end of a call means that nobody rings you anyway. I think it's just that reassurance that we provide to families.
That's really helpful. Thank you so much. I've just remembered my third thing, if I may, Chair.
Go for it.
It's a very brief one. We're talking a lot again about children within children's homes. I think it would be really enlightening to hear the voice of some of the young people that within the children's homes. Is that something that might be arranged for a future meeting, just to sort of have just to hear directly from the young people what it's like to be within a children's home, how they find the service, and if there's anything we can support the service to do better or something along those lines. I think it'd just be really useful. We're very good at talking about the young people. I think we need to hear from them as well.
Yeah. Did you want to answer that, Guy?
Yeah, this is probably a common question that gets asked quite a lot, and I totally understand it. But when you put young people in front of adults, and certainly foreign bodies, they kind of freeze, or
yeah,
get some.
I get that.
However, but we have had young people who there's different methods of doing that. It could be through voice recordings, it could be through information that we get young people to write down. I mean, we do a lot of consultation work. We'll call it consultation. We call it a weekly chat in our world, and it's a really organic conversation with young people, and we ask them about how they feel. But we generally, part of the review process is that we speak about the child's voice, they get to kind of demonstrate that. But it's certainly something I can raise women managers, because it's about how really we can capture that. But feedback to the people who invest in us, really, because I think it's really important that they don't just see us as though we are the you know, the I suppose the curators of their life. You know, we're all involved in this, and they won't know about the counsellors, you know, and that's not a dismissive response. It's just that they're caught up in their own world. But it's certainly something we can certainly look to getting back as part of a process. But I think putting them in front of an audience might be a test too far.
Yeah. I was thinking maybe a less formal setting than an actual scrutiny meeting, but yeah. And I'm aware that does happen to a certain extent within the recommendation 41 visits as well.
It does. Chair, could I just come in here for a second, please? We used to have an informal conversation between care leavers and counsellors, and Councillor Foster might remember this or not, at the town hall. We used to have a really informal tea, sandwiches, orange juice. It was a real chance to have as Guy's describing, more of that, that kind of chat over a tea time. And I think once COVID says it's actually safe for us to do that, it would be really good to bring some young people in from the children's homes. I think the problem is, or the issue is, with Scrutiny being on YouTube as well, you're asking young people to come into the public domain and share with everybody that they're in care, and they won't want to do that. But I think we could definitely do some conversation, some real in-depth conversation about what life is like for them living in the children's homes. It'd be really good to do that at the town hall or wherever else when it's safe to do so. Thanks, Julie.
It's a really interesting point, and it's a very delicate balance. I once remember going to corporate parenting. We played a game that I thought was completely ridiculous, which joined all of us together with pieces of string which represented adults that were involved in young people's lives. And by the end of the meeting, I think you were there, Adam, I think you might have been there, Rob, I don't know. Anyway, by the end of the meeting, the entire room was covered in pieces of string with adults interfering in these young people's lives. So I've always sort of tried to think of how we can do the best without being another one of those adults that interferes all the time. I don't know what Guy thinks about that, but I'm going to come to Guy again in a minute, because I'll go to Councillor Durhams first, though. Danielle.
Am I okay to ask 2 questions, or if possible?
You can ask as many questions as you want, Danielle.
Yeah, so the first one was in regards to Becky's comment about the 5 young people who have complex needs, I think, who are placed out of the borough, and the transitional plans that was in through the adult services. Again, I understand that the transient kind of process of children or young people, coming into the service is not necessarily specified around ages, but is it usual that, as we would see with anybody with an additional need, that if we have the opportunity that we do start that transitional process before 16 and 17, like we would with somebody on an EHC, for instance, because we start that for good practice at 14. And I'm just thinking, often for children who are in care and supported living situations, it must be quite a difficult time anyway, coming up to 18. So a year might not seem very long for them to be able to forward plan and be prepared. So that's the first part. So I'm happy to have that answered, and then I'll come back with a second, if that's okay.
Yeah, I think that the difference more recently, and certainly since my involvement with external placement and the permanent placement panels, is that the leave-in care service, as you know, has come back inside. So therefore, they have the same social workers. So those conversations will be starting at an earlier age. And we're building the relationships with adults, and we have agreed that all conversations need to start at the minimum at 16. So that's where we've gone from having a service that was external, where maybe conversations were starting later, to much earlier, with, as you say, with a view that these are started at 14, 15 for some, who, but without raising anxiety. You appreciate that, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you. And the second one, and I'm really sorry if I should know this, when we're talking about terms of reference that we use with the children who reside in some of the properties, do we tend to use the term children's home? I just wonder if it'd remove some of the stigma if they're just going home, obviously once they're settled, but it becomes their home rather than we're referencing and we're separating them from their peers and general kind of people that they integrate with. But it seems really stigmatized that we're referencing that people that reside in that, as we know as corporate parents, they become our children, so they're just at home in a sense. Or is that not used outside formal meetings?
Yeah, what I would say is I think for our staff and people who work in our homes, they are just homes. It's the children. It's really difficult because the two words together mean something different. Children's home. But if it's a home of a child, it means something different. But we try and we try not to use the word placements. We try not to use that because it's their home. Same for foster carers. We want it to stay as their home. But actually, I suppose one of the things that Councillor Raystrick sort of touched on in some ways is that when he talks about the numbers of people who come into contact with children in care, the other thing that signifies children in care is the bureaucracy that is around children in care is really significant. So all of the legislation describes children's homes, the inspection regime describes children's homes, and it's really difficult for practitioners across the partnership to distinguish between when you're talking to a child or a young person around where do you live, and then using that language, because it seems to be used interchangeably. But equally, the police would call them children's homes, your health call them children's homes. So it's one of the things that young people throughout my career have said, that we need to try and find a different way of describing things. And there's been quite a lot of research done over many, many years, but it's something we've not been able to crack as a profession. And I will just mention here that the Josh McAllister, who's currently doing an independent review of children's social care, is really keen on this issue and really trying to think about how do we get rid of some of the bureaucracy that surrounds children in care, children on a child protection plan, children in need. And he's really keen to think about how we do that as a whole. As a whole country, how do we demystify and how do we debureaucratise some of them things, because it is something that is really evident when you speak to children in care. And one of the things that I was going to say when we do get to the point where we meet with children in care is they tend to then use that language as well if we're not careful. So instead of seeing their family, they will talk about contact. And we've got to be really careful as professionals that we don't make that even worse. So I think it's a really tricky one actually. But certainly for our staff, we would call it, this is your home. And we wouldn't be saying, you're going back to a children's home, you're going back home. That's the way we would be describing it.
Thank you.
It's an excellent point.
It was a simple question and a really long answer, wasn't it? Sorry.
That's just your routine, Bob. I think we are all influenced by the case for change, aren't we, of Mr. McAllister? Yeah. So we've seen that throughout everything we're talking about this year. Councillor Baines, Stephen.
Yeah, I think what I wanted to say has already been covered by Guy and the rest of the team of officers. I just feel it is totally wrong to ask the young people to come in front of a group of strangers, which we would be to them, and it's totally just not acceptable. The corporate parents who do the 44 visits, they should be able to. That could be the way to do it, to get feedback from them through through scrutiny. And I think it's just totally unrealistic to even consider putting those young people under such strain. I think they've got enough problems in life as it is without having to add to them. We're supposed to be there to help them.
That's exactly right, Stephen. As I say, that even a corporate parent really opened my eyes. And we need to hear their voice, but it's a question of whether we need to hear it in person. And yeah, it's a very difficult situation, and I think sympathetically handled. Along with that, my last thing on children's homes before I go on to fostering, I'm sure Becky's ears have just picked up. Giving evidence to the select committee last week, I think the Children's Commissioner said that the people in residential children's homes should become pushy parents with regard to the children's schooling, and not accept just what's on offer. We should become like helicopter parents. These are the people who are closest to our young people. I wonder what the general consensus was that about.
I think we would agree. They're our children, and we want the best for them. And I think what we would say across the services, I think we've got some very pushy parents actually across our workforce, and I think rightly so. I think one of the things that I think we're really fortunate in Calderdale is we've got a very good head of the virtual school who is very proactive, and I think again acts as a very pushy parent who wants the best, who wants to make sure that children's education. I know in guys staff, when they're talking to children about education, I would absolutely see them as pushy parents, because I know they are really trying hard to get children in education, get them back engaged. So I think it's a really good comment. I suppose the bit we should be asking is, why do we need to do that? Because there's something wrong with the system where we need to keep doing that. It should be a given that things are happening for our most vulnerable children. So I think that's the interesting bit of that one.
All right, thank you. I was sort of hoping for that answer, really. I'm almost sure we were going to get it. I just want to on to the fostering part of it. I was very impressed with the marketing campaign when the last time I looked at it, and yet now I'm a bit confused. 2.16, our strategy to further develop blah, blah, blah. And parent, the last sentence, will attract interest from IFA carers. Well, if you compare that with, I'm not sure that was the point of the marketing campaign, was it? 2.13, 6 new applications in progress, obviously a successful campaign, I would hope. Are those two things not a bit confused? Are we trying to attract IFAs, or are we trying to recruit new foster parents? Which are we trying to do?
We are recruiting. Our focus is to recruit mainstream carers. But if you recall, when we were last at Scrutiny, one of the councillors made the point about competing with the independent fostering agencies. Is our budget big enough, etc., etc. So what we're saying is that we are recruiting at the moment from the inquiries to positive applications, we're running at 12.5%, which is very good. Now these aren't these are mostly mainstream, but we've just had one carer approved who has come over from the independent sector. So our focus is mainstream, but I think what we're trying to say is it's also pricking up the interest of carers in the independent sector who say, actually, Calderdale is a good place to look at moving to fostering. So we're not losing any to the independent agency, but we certainly have gained one that I did the decision on in the recent past. And we've got 11 fostering mainstream applications, so 11 potential fostering households booked for the Skills to Foster, which is a preparation course in September. And we've got 5 applications that we're actually assessing now in the 2-month period. So there may be an independent fostering agency foster carer coming forward, but our focus is absolutely on the community.
I suppose the difference, Councillor is because if we get somebody who approaches from the independent sector, they're already approved. So that piece of work has been done for us. Somebody will have spent a lot of time approving, training. So actually, if we get people who are interested from the independent sector, I suppose that's the icing on the cake, really. we need to keep recruiting mainstream carers. But what I would say from my experience, and Becky will probably say the same as well, if you recruit somebody from the independent sector, they tend to bring their friends with them as well. So you don't end up bringing one, you end up 2 or 3 carers will come at the same time. So we're still recruiting mainstream carers, but we're boosting our numbers with experienced foster carers as well. And I think that's where, and I know I've said this before, the key thing that attracts people is the overall offer. It is based on the support that they get. The money is a small part of it, but if we can increase that offer in terms of making it really, really attractive for people to come to Calderdale to be foster carers, that's the bit where we start to make the biggest gains. And I think that's what we're probably starting to see now, is that people are going, this looks different, it feels different. But if they speak to our foster carers, who would say they get good support, and I think that's where you start to make the biggest gains, actually. And I would hope we continue to do the mainstream, and if we get some independent fostering agencies, carers coming across, I think that's a bonus for us.
It's about focus, Rob.
Yeah.
Question was really about focus.
Yeah.
I think the last time Becky was here, we had a discussion around this. If we've got a really great marketing campaign, it won't attract a single foster care unless you've got a really good product to market about. That's the entire key to it. So that we're attracting IFAs should be a byproduct, not something that we're focusing on.
Yes, I think that's what we would say, Councillor Eastrick. It's a byproduct.
I don't want the plan to be, the strategy to become confused.
No.
And falling between two stools, don't you? You've got to stick to what you're good at and what you're getting at. That's my point. Councillor Riveron, Helen.
The point's actually passed, Chair. I was going to comment on the point made before about pretty parents, but I think it's all been said.
All right, good. Can somebody explain to me what paragraph 6.1 means? Anybody?
I'm just finding it.
Am I as thick as a chip?
What the data tells us is that what we've seen consistently now for a number of years, actually it probably goes back beyond 2016 as well. If we get measured every year in terms of the numbers of children that become looked after, and we also get measured on the numbers of children that have ceased to be looked after. What the national data tells you is that year upon year, more children are coming into care than they are leaving care. So some of that is to do with, there are less adoptions taking place because of some of the capacities. There's a whole range of factors there that stop children leaving care. But what we're seeing nationally is that upward trend. So I think in terms of numbers, the numbers have gone up consistently nationally. And I think there's some local authorities where they're talking about really big jumps in terms of 10, 20% over a period of a number of years. But mainly when you look at the data, what it says, it really clearly is there's more coming in than there is leaving care. And it doesn't go into any more detail than that, but that's just a figure that actually stands out when you look at the two graphs. Lots of children coming in, but not as many leaving care.
That's not what it says 6.1, is it? If that's what it says, then I'd understood it, but it doesn't say that. Greater drop in numbers leaving care relative to the numbers entering care. Is it the word that relative that's tricking me up, or is it the wrong way around?
Yeah, I think there's a better way of wording that, actually. When I read it myself, I think there's a better way of wording that. But I think that's what it's saying, is that more people coming in and less people leaving.
I'm not going to argue, but that's not what it's saying. Anyway, it doesn't matter. Enough. And one other thing, section 6.3. I understand that, I like people who build up their own achievements, but 6.3, strong negotiations. The White Rose framework means you don't do any negotiating. You just pick up the telephone.
No, it doesn't work. No, what we have, Councillor Rich, again, I think this is, again, it's a useful conversation to have, is because we have now established a dedicated team who look for placements. So the fact that they're on the contract is just that's as far as the White Rose framework goes. They're on the contract. It's then up to us to not negotiate, but to talk to the providers around the matching of young people. So actually all the White Rose framework do is they provide a framework that we can look on for placements. And that's the first bit, and that's the easiest bit. The harder bit is trying to talk to providers around, would you be able to take this young person? These are the needs. We then have to do a really detailed profile. So the White Rose framework is just the way that everything hangs together. But actually it's us that does the work actually there.
Yeah, if you lose another argument here, because I know exactly what the White Rose framework is, and you don't need negotiations to get a contract off. It says here negotiations to value for money. The price is set on the White Rose framework. It's not the point I'm making at all.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm very encouraged by this report. Members of this panel will know that I'm a big supporter of Calderdale Children's Homes. I think we do an excellent job, and more of them will mean we'll be able to do an excellent job for even more of our young people. Yeah, very pleased with it, and especially about the 2 new houses that we're going to buy. We'll come back to that in the future. So thank you, Guy and Becca. Always a pleasure to see you. That's it. Item 8, members. Work programme. Any comments? I'm going to take that as a no. I've looked forward to the work. I've looked through the work programme. I think we're looking pretty good for the next 2 or 3 meetings anyway. So we've managed to finish just before 8 o'clock, which is amazing, really. Because when I looked at the agenda, I thought we were going to be here till midnight. So well done, members, for that. Watch the Olympics. Have a general evening. Go get your dinner. And we'll see you in a month or 2.
Thank you very much, Chair. Thanks, members.
Thank you for your attendance. And thank again, if they're not still here, I mean, I know Guy is still here and Becky's still here. So my thanks to the rest of the participants who came this evening. And also to Panita, I thought I did